What's up, guys, and welcome to this week's Dynasty Talk with Sam. Last week we covered updated wide receiver rankings in Dynasty. So this week we're going to dive in to my Dynasty RB ranks that have been updated. So definitely stay tuned after the intro, and we'll see how they differ from previously in the season. So let's get this kicked off with 25 through 21. Number 25, Isaiah Pacheco. He's on a great offense. I don't want to speak too much about this. I think he's a fine player in a great situation. I think this is about where his value is kind of capped. He might go up a little bit. He might go down a little bit, but I think he's going to be a productive guy for your team as an RB2 moving forward. 24, Rachaad White. He's had some really high spike weeks. I still just don't believe he's truly an elite player, an elite runner. I love the situation he's in getting the pass catching reps recently, but I just don't really know if he has that upside. Now, if they continue to feature him and they don't replace him over the next year or two, obviously this rank could be wrong. I'm just always tempted and a little scared of RBs kind of in this range being replaced in a dynasty sense compared to a redraft format. 23, Najee Harris. This one is definitely a slight fall from the beginning of the season. But Harris has looked pretty good over the last couple weeks of the season as they've started to feature him and Warren a bit more in the offense. But I just think when it comes down to it, that Pittsburgh offense is not elite. As much as I love some of the weapons on the team, Kenny Pickett is a safe quarterback, a good quarterback 2 for your team. He is not a quarterback 1, and they will never be a top 10 offense, really. So with Harris splitting reps, I don't really see him being an elite asset for your team. 22, Nick Chubb. This is really a tough one, and it's kind of just going with my gut here. I think once Chubb comes back, he could ascend to being a top 12 guy again. We're just going to have to wait for that to happen, and it could be as soon as the beginning of next year, could be halfway through next year, and he really couldn't return to the year after. But my thought is if Chubb is a top 5 running back before this injury, even if he loses 20% off that, I still think he's a top 12, top 15 guy in the league. So this is me just betting on his talent coming back. 21, Tyjae Spears. I've really talked this guy up, and I love what I've seen, right? If Derrick Henry leaves, Spears is going to be a top 12 guy. If this offense can get even slightly better, I think Spears could really be a flexible player on your team. He's got a great talent. He's just kind of stuck behind Henry. But as soon as next year, that could definitely change. Now, I wouldn't be spending elite assets to go get Spears, as they could always replace him with a rookie next year, and he could fall back into this tandem that he's kind of in now. 20, Joe Mixon, Aaron Jones, David Montgomery, Derrick Henry, Alvin Kamara. I'm going to talk of these guys as a whole, right? Older players that are producing right now for your team. Kamara is the one I would pick first. Mixon, the one I would pick last, just because of the offseason stuff. I'm still a little sketched of his long-term value, even though he's looked good. And everyone in between, right? I think Aaron Jones is still a really good player. I love David Montgomery's role on his team, even with Gibbs ascending. Montgomery is not going anywhere. And Derrick Henry, when they win, when the Titans play well, he's an elite player. When they have bad game script, not as much so. But I still think he can be a number 1 back for your team. And at this age, you may acquire him if you're a contender. Moving into 15 here, this one was tough. James Cook, I don't love what I've seen, but he's on a good offense. He's on his rookie contract. So I think this is kind of where James Cook belongs. I could see him kind of fluctuating between here and that Rachaad White. Like 15 through 25 is kind of tough. They're very similar players, and it just kind of depends on what you're looking for. I think because Buffalo's offense is slightly more elite, that's why I have James Cook here. DeAndre Swift, kind of the same, but just a better player than James Cook. Maybe a short leash moving forward, as he's only on that 1-year deal. But for now, on Philadelphia, a very elite talent on an elite offense and getting pretty good work. Tony Pollard, 13. I would expect Pollard to kind of look better over the second half of the season. You know, he is still coming back from that injury of the fractured bone in his leg from this offseason. So let's give him a break on a slow start. Cowboys offense is going to keep scoring points, and I'd expect some slight, just some of that to go to Pollard in the second half of the season, whereas it didn't really in the first season. Javonte Williams, this guy's coming up my board a little bit. He just looks like he is healthy, and he's probably the number one player in that offense right now with Judy not really producing. Sutton, probably a sell high for me, but Williams looks good. He's getting a bulk of those carries on Denver's offense, and I don't really expect that to change as long as he's in Denver under Sean Payton. 11, Devin Achane. This one's tough. I kind of want to put him higher, but just because we haven't seen a lot, I'm going to hedge a little bit, and I'm going to put him at 11 here. Completely electric player, right? Incredibly efficient. But we'll see what happens when he comes back. If he can keep that efficiency, he could really fly up dynasty ranks and be a top 6 guy. But he already got hurt once, and his smaller body frame I am slightly worried about. So that's why I have him here at 11. 10, Josh Jacobs, just the guy on that offense. He's going to get the touches. We all heard on the broadcast, Antonio Pierce said, I want to build this team around you. And I think I believe him. I think Pierce probably keeps that job with the energy he's bringing. And I think Josh Jacobs comes back on a contract and really is just a workhorse for that offense. Now, it's not an elite offense, but it's so hard to find backs that get the amount of touches that Jacobs gets. He's going to get goal line work. He's going to get the touches. And I think the yards will just come and go every week, but the touches are so important for running back. Number 9, Austin Eckler. I really wanted to have Eckler higher, but his age and potentially a guy coming in next year worries me slightly, but he's such an elite asset when he's on the field that I think you have to have him in your top 10. Probably the number 2 running back in a redraft sense, so I don't want to have him any lower than here. Seeing as RBs fluctuate anyway, that if you're getting elite production, I think having those guys on your dynasty team is very valuable if you're trying to win. Number 8, Kenneth Walker. This one's tough. Charbonnet's looked pretty good and is really cutting into Walker's role. But I think Seattle's a good enough team that they can kind of both coexist. And I still think Walker is going to get enough touches moving forward and for the rest of his contract for him to be a solid low-end RB1, high-end RB2 with a lot of talent. And, Charbonnet could go down and he could kind of be that elite guy at times. So we'll see. Jonathan Taylor really has returned to his workhorse role. Sorry, I had to drink some coffee, guys. But Taylor looks good, right? He's warmed back up coming back into the season. They're utilizing very well. And the Colts team looks pretty good. They're scoring a decent amount of points for a Gardner Minshew-led offense. Number 6, Etienne, looked amazing this year, scoring a ton of touchdowns. That could regress slightly, but I think his role and the team he's on are great for Etienne moving forward. And I like him in the top 10 here. So here's the top 5. 5, Saquon Barkley, kind of a better version of Josh Jacobs, right? Tons of touches, but an elite talent. That offense is absolutely abysmal, and I would expect that to change next year, whether it's just Daniel Jones and Andrew Thomas coming back, or if they go out and get someone in the draft. Barkley's a part and going to be probably the best and most explosive player on almost any offense he's on, and he's going to be featured. So I'm just kind of betting on talent here. 4, Jahmyr Gibbs. I got to say, I almost wanted to put him at 3 or 2 based on how he's looked recently. And I love that he got some goal line touches, even with Monty back last week. But Gibbs just looks great. He looks explosive. He's good in the pass game. He's good in the run game. And he's young, right? There's an argument that if you didn't have the hype of Bijan Robinson, Gibbs could almost be higher and swapped with Bijan here. But number 3, Christian McCaffrey, the RB1 in a redraft sense. So going to have him up here. He still has plenty of years left to come. Not going to talk too much about CMC. He's a stud. Go get him if you're trying to win games. Number 2, Breece Hall. Up and down, but such an elite talent. Still returning from last year's ACL injury. And he's going to be the focus of that offense. They're going to feed him. And I think we have better days ahead, whether it's Aaron Rodgers coming back or just next year things looking a little up for the Jets. So number 1, Bijan Robinson. I'm sticking strong. Such an elite talent. Arthur Smith, but I just think the talent will win out with Bijan. And he's going to be an RB1 for the next 5-6 years in Dynasty. And that's a lot of insulated value. Even with an injury, even with some poor games, Bijan's going to be up there. So I think he's just a safe play for your Dynasty team. Now, I know that was a quick video, but I just wanted to run you 25-1 in my Dynasty ranks. Shoot me a comment if you agree, disagree with any of these guys. I love talking about it. And thank you guys for tuning in.